To begin with, I will be talking about my topic, which is deinstitutionalization and the mentally ill. So firstly, we need to discuss what deinstitutionalization really is. It typically is moving a severely ill patient from institutions like mental hospitals and then back into the community for outpatient care. These are places like nursing homes and private hospitals. And this has created different types of professional services needed, which is where a human service professional would come in. And as you can see on the right, I put a picture illustrating sometimes the negative places where these patients that are released from state mental hospitals are put. So places like jails, homeless shelters, and dumpsters. Furthermore, to understand deinstitutionalization and the topic, looking at the roots may help. So the process started in 1995 with the spread of the first antipsychotic drug called chlorpromazine, commonly known as Thorazine. So these drugs were mainly used for people with schizophrenia. And as we look more on, 10 years later, with the enactment of federal Medicaid and Medicare, psychiatric hospitals were more motivated to deinstitutionalize their patients. However, these patients who were deinstitutionalized consisted of 50 to 60 with schizophrenia, 10 to 50% were diagnosed with disabilities such as manic depressive illness and severe depression, and 10 to 15% were also diagnosed with brain diseases such as strokes, Alzheimer's, and epilepsy. In all, taking a wider look at the process of deinstitutionalization, it has progressed from viewing the mentally ill as demonic, from harsh treatments such as lobotomy and electroshock therapy, to even more recent passages such as Medicaid, which is where the outstate hospitals got motivation to move patients into nursing homes and general hospitals because of the exclusion of the coverage for people with institutions for mental diseases. So now 16% of those are in jails and prisons have a mental ill disability. And it's very clearly that even to this day, it's very difficult on how to treat people with these. So now that we have looked at the topic of deinstitutionalization and the mentally ill, I want to go briefly over the findings of the research I conducted, which first of all relates to the human service professional and the client needs of working together. However, in this case, the client is mentally ill and unable to communicate with the mental health professional. So then this study conducted by Strand Jennifer and the Department of Psychology looked at how these mental health professionals viewed the parents as either helpful or hindered to treatment. And this overall goes over the stressful importance of the parents working with the mental health professional to meet the patient's needs. In another of my findings, it looked at how other professions are affected by deinstitutionalization. Beria does a great job of analyzing the role of police officers, and they are the first line responders that have to deal with discharged patients from institutions. So this stresses that many other people are affected by this process. Also, when coming across many sources, I thought it was interesting to see the reasons why they say that deinstitutionalization is a failure, because it increases homelessness, suicide, acts of violence, and overall, they're being put into a large community without long-term care. To end my findings, it's important to stress that not all patients who are deinstitutionalized have negative outcomes. There have been numerous demonstrations that show that patients have been successfully maintained in the community. And solutions may involve housing, medical care, employment, and even social opportunities that help them to become a better part of the community. Now, let's look at the impact on the vulnerable population. Who is the vulnerable population in this case would be the mentally ill discharged patients. These patients that are deinstitutionalized go untreated, resulting in many negative outcomes like homelessness, incarceration, and violence. This is important to the human service professional because this field approaches on meeting the human's needs and standing up for those who cannot speak out because these patients have a condition that affects the way they think and behave. They're not able to speak on their behalf. So it is the human service professional job to take care of that. Lastly, we will look at ethical standards and ethical dilemmas that could arise. Ethical standards are important to determine the right course of action during a situation. Each situation is different and requires a different course of action. A human service professional must look at all views when making a decision. They must consider the parents, the agency, and the patient themselves. The codes of ethics was developed to aid the human service professional in ethical decision-making. Because each situation is different, many ethical dilemmas could arise. In my topic of deinstitutionalization, a conflict that could arise could be conflicting views on how to treat the mentally ill patient. This could therefore cause conflict between the human service professional and the agency or parent. The human service professional must take the right course of action based on the codes of ethics. In all, deinstitutionalization is a complex process that involves many communicating with each other in order to have the mentally ill patient have a successful transition from a larger institution back into the community.